I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No, I am the one who knocks.
Chills. Every single time. It doesn't matter how many times I rewatch that scene, the hair on the back of my arms just stands up. It is arguably the most famous monologue in 21st century television.
It really is. And Jake, usually when we talk about learning English, we talk about textbooks, grammar drills, maybe ordering a coffee in a cafe. But today, I want to argue that the best English lesson you can get isn't in a classroom. It's in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a high school chemistry teacher named Walter White.
That is a bold claim. You are saying we should use a meth dealer as a role model for language learning? I mean, I guess if you want to learn how to intimidate your neighbors or negotiate with cartels, sure. But for the average listener?
Hear me out. Breaking Bad is actually perfect for advanced learners because it is a masterclass in something called register shifting. Walter White speaks two languages. He speaks the precise, sterile language of a scientist, and then he shifts into the terrifying, assertive language of a kingpin. Navigating that gap is exactly what fluency feels like.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So we are going to break down the dialogue of Breaking Bad to see what makes it tick linguistically. But before we get into the specific lines, we have to set the stage, because you can't separate these words from when they were spoken.
Exactly. Context is everything. So Breaking Bad premiered on January 20, 2008. Think about where the world was at that moment.
January 2008. That is right at the precipice of the Great Recession. The housing bubble is bursting, people are losing their pensions, anxiety is just sky high across America.
Right. And that is why the pilot episode hit such a nerve, even though the ratings started small. I looked this up. The pilot only had about 1.4 million viewers. But by the time they reached the finale, Felina, in 2013, that number had exploded to 10.3 million viewers, according to Nielsen ratings.
That is a massive jump. I remember reading that Breaking Bad was one of the first shows to really benefit from the Netflix effect, where people caught up between seasons. But you mentioned the recession. How does that economic context change how we hear the language?
Well, the vocabulary of the early seasons is the vocabulary of desperation. It's passive, it's apologetic. Walter is constantly using words like sorry, I can't, it's not enough. He is a man who feels things are happening to him. And that financial anxiety made him incredibly relatable to Americans who were watching their 401ks vanish.
So the journey of the show isn't just him breaking bad morally, it's him breaking bad linguistically. He goes from passive to active.
That is the perfect transition to that first quote we started with. I am the one who knocks. Let's look at the grammar there. It's actually a brilliant example of a relative clause.
Break it down for us.
So a relative clause gives us more information about a noun. He could have said, I knock on doors. That is a simple subject-verb sentence. It's factual, but it's weak. By saying, I am the one who knocks, he is using a defining relative clause to claim an identity.
It adds exclusivity, right? Like, there are many people in the world, but in this specific category of danger, there is only one, and it is me.
Precisely. It emphasizes agency. In the sentence, a guy opens his door and gets shot, the guy is the object. He is the victim. The grammar reflects passivity. When Walt flips it to I am the one who knocks, he is putting himself firmly in the subject position. He is the actor. He is the cause, not the effect.
I think the delivery helps too. I was reading a linguistic analysis on Reddit, actually, where people were debating the stress in that sentence. A lot of people quote it as, I am the one who knocks, putting the stress on the action, but Bryan Cranston doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't. He stresses the pronoun. I am the one who knocks. It's deeply narcissistic. The focus isn't on the violence, the focus is on him as the source of the violence. And that aligns with his character arc. He starts doing this for his family, supposedly, but by this point in season 4, it's about his ego.
It's interesting you bring up ego, because that leads us right into the next line I want to discuss. Season 5, the desert scene. He's talking to a rival distributor, Declan, and he doesn't use a relative clause here. He uses the imperative mood. Say my name.
Oh, this scene is pure power dynamics. In English, the imperative, giving orders, is usually considered rude unless you have a position of authority. You don't walk up to a stranger and say, "Give me that." You say, "Could you please pass that?" You use modals to soften it.
Right, politeness strategies, but Walt strips all of that away.
He does. He creates a linguistic trap. By forcing Declan to say Heisenberg, he is forcing Declan to participate in the legend. It's not just an introduction, it's a submission. And historically, this moment feels very connected to the myth of the American West.
How so? I mean, they are literally in a desert, so the visual is there.
It is the classic outlaw archetype. Think about Billy the Kid or Jesse James. In Westerns, the name carries weight. The reputation arrives before the man. When Walt demands recognition of his name, he is tapping into that manifest destiny idea of conquering the territory. He's not a teacher anymore. He's an outlaw king.
It's funny you mentioned the outlaw archetype because there is a tension there. We root for the outlaw in movies. We want the cowboy to win. But in this scene, it feels uncomfortable. It's not triumphant. It's terrifying. Is that just the acting, or is it the words?
It's the silence between the words. English learners often focus so much on what to say that they forget about pausing. Cranston waits. He lets the imperative hang there. If you are learning English for business, take note. If you want to show authority, stop talking after you make your point. Don't fill the silence.
That's a great tip. Nervous talkers lose power. Okay, let's move to another line that is just pure menace, but it uses a really interesting piece of vocabulary. It's when he confronts Hank, his brother-in-law, in the garage. Hank realizes Walt is the bad guy, and Walt simply says, "If that's true, if you don't know who I am, then maybe your best course would be to tread lightly."
I love this line because of the word tread. It is such a specific choice. Why didn't he say walk carefully or watch your step?
Yeah, watch your step is the standard idiom, right? Tread feels older.
It is. Tread comes from Old English, tredan. It has a heavier, almost poetic weight to it. We see it in literature, like Yeats. Tread softly because you tread on my dreams. By using tread instead of walk, Walt elevates the threat. It sounds biblical. It sounds inevitable.
It also changes the idiom. The phrase tread lightly implies that the ground itself is fragile. Like if you take one wrong step, the whole thing collapses. It's not just that Hank might get hurt, it's that the entire situation is explosive.
Exactly, and this is a great lesson in idioms for learners. You can't always swap words out. Walk lightly doesn't mean the same thing. Tread lightly is a fixed phrase that specifically means be diplomatic or be cautious because of danger. It's the difference between a physical instruction and a psychological warning.
I want to talk about the voice for a second, because we can't ignore the physical production of these sounds. I remember reading an interview where Bryan Cranston said he intentionally lowered his vocal pitch as the seasons went on.
He did. In season 1, his voice is higher, breathier. He speaks from his throat, a bit anxious. By season 5, he is speaking from his diaphragm. The resonance changes. For English learners, this is crucial. Intonation and pitch convey almost as much meaning as the words themselves. If you say tread lightly with a high questioning pitch, it sounds like a suggestion. If you drop the pitch at the end, it's a command.
It's that falling intonation of authority. Teachers use it, cops use it, and apparently meth kingpins use it. Okay, we have to get to the finale, the confession. For 5 seasons, Walt has been telling Skylar, telling himself, I did it for this family. And then, finally, in the last episode, he admits the truth. I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it.
This is my favorite line from a linguistic perspective because it is so incredibly simple. Subject, verb, object, prepositional phrase. I did it for me. No big words, no scientific jargon, but the power comes from the preposition, for.
Prepositions are usually the nightmare of English learners. In, on, at, for. They never seem to make sense, but here, for is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It is. For indicates purpose or beneficiary. For years, the beneficiary was my family. That was his moral shield. By switching the object of the preposition to me, he strips away the shield. It's a moment of total linguistic honesty. And notice the rhythm. I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. 3 short, punchy sentences, staccato rhythm.
That rhythm implies certainty, doesn't it? Long, winding sentences can sound like you're making excuses. Short sentences sound like facts.
Spot on. It's the grammar of acceptance. He isn't arguing anymore. And culturally, this was a massive moment. There was so much debate while the show was airing. Nuanced arguments about whether Walt was a hero or a villain. People were rooting for him despite the atrocities.
The anti-hero phenomenon. We saw it with Tony Soprano, too. But Walt was different because we saw the transformation. We saw the Mr. Chips to Scarface evolution that Vince Gilligan pitched.
And this line, I did it for me, basically resolves that cultural debate. It's the show telling the audience, stop making excuses for him. He isn't a victim of the American healthcare system anymore. He isn't a victim of the economy. He is a man who chose power because it made him feel alive.
It's incredible how much character development can be packed into a 3-letter pronoun, me. So, Rachel, if someone is listening to this and they want to use Breaking Bad to improve their English, what is your practical advice? Do they just watch and repeat?
Don't just repeat. Analyze the why. When Walt shifts from passive to active voice, ask yourself why he did that. When he uses a formal idiom like tread lightly instead of slang, ask what that says about his status. Try to shadow him, literally speak along with the character, and see if you can match that falling intonation. It helps you feel the weight of the language.
And maybe don't try the say my name technique at your next job interview. Might come off a little strong.
Definitely not. Unless you are applying to be a drug lord, stick to my name is and a handshake.
Good advice. You know, looking back at the stats, it's wild to think that Bryan Cranston won 4 Primetime Emmys for lead actor for this role. The industry recognized that this wasn't just acting, it was a total embodiment of a character's decline, and the language was the vehicle for that decline.
Absolutely. It's a tragedy, really, in the classical sense. And like all great tragedies, the hero's fatal flaw is revealed through his words, his pride, hubris. It's all there in the grammar.
Well, I'm never going to hear a knock at the door the same way again. Rachel, this has been a fascinating look at the darker side of English grammar.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Remember, tread lightly out there.
Always, and for our listeners, let us know what show we should break down next. Until then, class dismissed.